They passed a new bankruptcy law. Is it working?
I think so. And you're not the one that's starting with the bad loan problem. In fact, every single interview of my last 4 years always starts with that. But I think, we are about to see the end of the cycle. And if you look at the bankruptcy code that this new government has brought in and has been able to operationalize, and the number of cases that are now going there, some of the largest cases are now on the verge of getting resolution. So I think, the pace there is picking up, and that is something that's very welcome.
What about the tightening norms for the recognition of some of those loans? Is that making any difference at all?
I think, the tightening norms have just come in. Of course, the tightening norms will cause some amount of pain in the short term. In the longer term, it's something that we all aspired for, but it was difficult to achieve, given the fact, the system itself isn't organized in that manner. But now that the norms have come in, I am sure that industry as well as the banks will all benefit from it ultimately.
The Modi government recently announced a major recapitalization. I'm looking at some of the details as we speak for the banks there. And this is specifically for government-owned banks, isn't it?
Yes.
Is that going to be enough, though? Or is there more needed from the government?
See, at this point of time, they have done a proper deep dive into the bad loan issues to determine how much capital is really going to be required. However, they have forecast a certain amount of growth rate. I don't think they have taken a growth rate that is beyond 12% for these banks. And therefore, it all depends upon how the banks grow as to whether the capital will be sufficient for both regulatory as well as for growth. For regulatory requirements, it will be sufficient. We are 100% certain of that. How much it will also help growth is something that we have to see as we go along.
There's, of course, a lot of controversy around the public banks. You've overseen during your tenure, of course, the State Bank of India. What's your read on all of that is happening? How do you respond to that?
See, I think, you have to understand that India has gone through a phase of very rapid growth. And thereafter, the downturn has resulted on account of a number of factors. It is not only something to do with the public sector banks. Infrastructure growth in our country had never happened at the pace at which it happened during the years 2008 to 2011. And therefore, when the downturn came, it came on the back of very many allegations of non-transparent allocation of resources, on certain decisions that were taken by the court in the interest of everybody. So a number of things contributed to the slowdown.
Yeah.
There was also some kind of a policy paralysis on the part of the government as it started reviewing its ways of doing very many things. And all of that has contributed to what we are seeing today. But having said that, I still believe that we are getting at the end of that cycle. India as a country is actually moving quite rapidly. If you look at the demographics, the sheer pressure of the population, of the young population is such that it is a country that is bound to develop. It is a country where economic activity will pick up, and all the signs are available. Most of the macros support it.
Yeah. In terms of how that gets fixed, and I want to flesh this out a little bit with you, because there's quite an intense debate that's happening in India, whether this is a chance or a starting point for more mergers when it comes to some of the government-owned banks. Is this the way to go about it?
Mergers is something probably they may look at once the balance sheets are fixed. I don't think they will go in at this point of time, but probably 2 years down the line, it is something that the government will probably look at. If you consider the sizes of the banks in India, they are really not optimal sizes. Other than the State Bank of India, which I had headed, which is 3 times larger from its next nearest competitor. Other than that, all of the banks are suboptimal in size. And therefore, I think, the case for a consolidation is very much there.
The macroeconomic environment is shifting around the world. You've got rising interest rates in a lot of countries. Is the cycle turning in India? And when the cycle starts turning, does that crimp growth? Does that prevent inbound investment?
I'll tell you something. One of the things that India, of course, is watching very closely are the oil prices. As you know, we are very large-scale energy importers, and therefore oil prices do make a difference to the amount of revenues that the government has in order to do its very many other programs. Therefore, oil prices is something that we are all watching. The other thing is regarding the fact that interest rates are going up in the rest of the world. However, because in India too today, the inflation is on the way up on account of the oil prices, so the rates are not going down. So at this point of time, of course, the rates are stable, but it seems to be on the upward trajectory. Now, if that is the case, there is still a very big difference in the interest rates of the developed markets as compared to ours. And therefore, people will still find a good place to invest in India.
A lot of the conversations I've had here in Abu Dhabi with some of the key decision makers have been around the expectation that there will be more volatility in global markets. Is that your biggest worry as well going forward in 2018? What's something that might keep you up at night?
See, keeping us up at night is probably, in the banking sector, the huge amount of technological change that is happening. In India especially, there is a lot of disintermediation going on, whether it be in the payment space, whether it be in the form of all kinds of other non-banks coming into banking activities. The unbundling of the various kinds of banking services that we give.
Yeah.
On the other hand, as you actually put in all of this technology to work, the cybersecurity piece also kicks in. So, those are things that are, I think, the real challenges that are ahead of us. The NPA cycle is a cycle. It will cease. The growth will again pick up. You will see a lot of investment coming back in. That's the nature of the country. The markets are huge, and it's well worth developing those markets. But on this technology front, I think we do have our work cut out for us.